All right. Good day, guys. We will be doing Sonnet 130, My Mistress's Eyes by William Shakespeare. Now, this is quite an easy poem. I do believe a lot of people have already got this down, that they know what's going on here. But for those of you who missed the lessons, I'm going to go through it very quickly, though. Obviously, this is a Shakespearean sonnet. That's where we're going to start. It's a Shakespearean sonnet, which is also known as an Elizabethan sonnet. This is in the time when Queen Elizabeth ruled England. And she did this while Shakespeare was alive, which is why we also call it an Elizabethan sonnet. Now, there is another type of sonnet, which is called a Petrarchan sonnet. It is named after a poet that also wrote sonnets, but his sonnets were very different from Shakespeare's, especially this one. One thing you must remember about this entire poem is that the poem was written on two levels. First of all, the poem was written as a love poem. It is a love poem, despite what we might think. It is a love poem. The speaker still loves his woman or his mistress despite everything. We're going to see that as we go through the poem. His mistress, despite everything, he still loves her. And then the other aspect of the poem that we are going to be dealing with is the sort of the fun that Shakespeare makes of the Petrarchans, or Petrarch with his sonnets that used to be written at the same time. So Shakespeare makes fun of his poems, his sonnets, and we will see throughout the poem why exactly he does this, or how he does it. Okay. Okay, hi guys. We will be doing Sonnet 130, My Mistress's Eyes by William Shakespeare. A lot of you already know this poem. You are well acquainted with it. This will be more for the people that need a bit of a revision session, or that did not pay attention during the lesson or have forgotten about it. We're going to run through this poem pretty quickly as I can, because it's such a simple poem. All right, now, first of all, the purpose of this poem is very important. Now, Shakespeare wrote this poem. It's called a Shakespearean sonnet, which is also called an Elizabethan sonnet, because Queen Elizabeth was the queen while Shakespeare was alive. And then there's a different kind of sonnet, which is called a Petrarchan sonnet. And the guy who wrote these sonnets, Petrarch, he used to write poems that were so cliche in the sense of romance and love. He made his mistress out to be like the most wonderful thing walking the earth. So when Shakespeare writes this sonnet, he writes it for two reasons. First of all, it is a love poem. He writes this as a love poem. He loves his mistress despite everything that's in the poem, which we'll go through line by line. He's also making fun of Petrarch and the Petrarchan sonnets that were written at the same time. Because of the way they were written, they made use of such language that was just overboard. Now, let's take a look. When we start off the poem, please note that, let's do this. Please note that I have 4 lines. Yeah, that's one stanza. And then I have another 4 lines here. That's another stanza. and then I have another 4 lines here. That's another stanza. And then I have 2 lines here that form its own stanza. This is typically the structure of a Shakespearean poem. It is put together with 3 stanzas of 4 lines each, and then at the end we have what we call the rhyming couplet. I'm going to put this in for you. So we have the rhyming couplet down here. And these are all 4-line stanzas with regular rhyming patterns. Regular rhyme. Regular rhyme. Okay, now what does that mean? Okay, you all remember how to map a rhyme scheme when you are given a poem. Okay, so what we do when we map a rhyme scheme, we go, sun is A, red is B, done rhymes with sun, so it is A, head rhymes with red, which is B. And you can go check out the rest of the poem and do it yourself. A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, and then G, G. And that is the rhyme scheme of the poem. If you are ever asked to talk about the rhyme scheme of the poem, you will be mentioning the structure of the poem, how it's put together. It's got 3 stanzas of 4 lines each with a regular rhyming pattern, and then it ends in a rhyming couplet. Shakespearean poems always look like this. They've got the 3 stanzas, 4 lines each, and then they've got that rhyming couplet at the end. Okay, notice that the rhyming couplet, it's called a rhyming couplet because these words rhyme. They don't rhyme with anything up here. They just rhyme down here. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the content of the poem. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. And this is where we start. Shakespeare makes all of these comparisons about his mistress, but he's not giving her compliments. He's giving her what we call anti-compliments. And what that means is that he's basically insulting her. Okay, anti-compliments. Okay, now let's go look quickly at what these anti-compliments are. All right, here he compares his mistress's eyes to the sun. If he says, my mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun, if someone says my mistress's eyes are like the sun, then they would be saying, you know, her eyes are bright, they are shiny, they are warm. But in this case, Shakespeare is saying that his mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. So he is comparing her eyes to the sun, but he is making an anti-compliment. Nothing like the sun. Okay? Coral is far more red than her lips red. So he's comparing coral to her lips. The color of coral to her lips. Let's add in the red there. Okay. And he says coral is more red than her lips. There's another anti-compliment. By the way, coral is an exoskeleton of a sea creature that as it builds and grows itself up, it forms these little coral reef pipes. So if you think about a coral reef and all those little, it looks like little trees and there are different colors, blue, reds, oranges, all of those, that is coral. So when he talks about red coral, it is quite red. Okay. If snow be white, why then her breasts are done. Okay, so he is now comparing the color of her breasts or the color of her skin to say that it is not snowy, it's not white, it is rather done. Her breasts are done, they're not white. And what done means is it's a brownish gray color. It's a little disturbing color. It's not a, it's not a color that you'd like to see on someone's skin. I think it would make them look a little sickly. Okay, so if snow be white, then her breasts are done. Be white, her breasts are done. Anti-compliment. If hairs be wires, then wires grow on her head. So he is comparing her hairs to wires and saying wires grow on her head. Another nice anti-compliment there. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. All right, so he's comparing the pretty colors of the roses. I'll get there just now, red and white. And he's comparing it to her cheeks, which do not contain this beautiful rose color. No such roses see I in her cheeks. Okay. By the way, the word damasked means it's a pattern. That's all that you need to know. It's a pattern, like a physical pattern. And that pattern that's being spoken about here, the red and the white, is, if you think about the roses, it's like the roses are patterned red and white. Pattern of red and white roses. And that is what she is supposed to look like in her cheeks. You know, the white skin with the red blush, which is part of the beauty standard of the day in Elizabethan England. Pattern of red and white, okay. But no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight, perfumes, than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. Okay, so once again, I've got an anticlimax here. He's comparing her breath to something that reeks. Her breath is not a perfume. There's more delight in perfume. There's more enjoyment in perfume than there is in the breath that comes from her. And then we can go down to the next stanza with its anti-compliments. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. So he is comparing the way she speaks to music, and she's saying that music has a more pleasing sound than the way she speaks. Okay. Line number 11, I grant I never saw a goddess go. Go as in walk. Walk, 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 walk. Okay. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. Okay, so the whole point here is that a goddess, which is something that doesn't actually exist if you think about ancient Greek and ancient Rome goddesses. He's basically saying that he's never seen a goddess move. But chances are good that when a goddess moves, she doesn't walk like normal people on the ground. She probably glides or floats or walks with extreme soft grace. And this guy is saying, even though I haven't seen that, I know for a fact that my mistress, when she walks, she treads on the ground. She walks flat-footedly hard on the ground. She walks like a normal person. There's no gliding or floating from his mistress. She just walks like a normal person. Okay. Never saw a goddess go, and my mistress when she walks. Comparing how the goddess walks and how his mistress walks. Okay, and then in the rhyming couplet at the end, now, and yet by heaven I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Okay, so now what he does here is that he talks about my love, and he compares my love to any she, any other woman. And what he is trying to say here now in the final two lines is that when he says by heaven, it's an exclamation. It's like, exclamation. Okay, by heaven is an exclamation. The exclamation will indicate that he is moved by emotion. Okay, and yet by heaven I think my love as rare. When he talks about my love, he is talking about his mistress. He's not talking about his love for his mistress. He's talking about his mistress herself. And he says that I think my mistress is just as rare. She is just as special. She's just as, outstanding as any she, any other woman, any other woman. Belied, as in lied to, with false compare. And what false compare is that making false comparisons, usually they consist of compliments, making false comparisons, compliments, but it is, false comparisons, making false comparisons, compliments that are not true and that are not realistic. Not true and not realistic. Okay. So the story now is this. Okay. Shakespeare wrote this poem, as I've said, as a love poem for his mistress. Yes, it might not seem like a love poem. The three stanzas that we're dealing with, all three of them, he just spends insulting her or giving her the anti-compliments. Okay? And then when we get to line 13 and 14, the rhyming couplet, and there's one thing that you must know about the Shakespearean sonnet is that by the rhyming couplet, just before the rhyming couplet, the turn happens. It means that whatever comes after or whatever comes before the rhyming couplet changes the tone and the mood of the poem. Okay, so the turn happens right before the rhyming couplet. The tone, the mood, everything shifts, okay? So whereas all of the poem throughout, he is basically joking. He is making fun. He is jesting, okay? But then, that's the whole of the poem. But then when he gets to the rhyming couplet, he admits that no matter what or who his mistress is, he still loves her. He says that she is just as rare as any other woman that has been lied to with all of these false comparisons. I mean, admits to loving her the way she is. And see, the whole point is that he is pointing out that he doesn't have to write a wonderful love poem with all of these compliments, saying like her eyes are like the sun, her lips are as red as coral, her breasts are as white as snow, etc. He says, I'm not going to have to say all of this because it's untrue. It is ridiculous. No one is perfect. And so he takes this time to joke around. But then in the turn, by the rhyming couplet, that is where the tone of the poem shifts. And he admits that he loves his woman the way that she is. I'm going to write here, the tone shifts. Okay, tone, mood changes. Okay. Now, like I said, the poem has two purposes. One is it's a love poem that Shakespeare wrote to his mistress. Even though it doesn't seem like a love poem, it's full of anti-compliments, but the tone changes here in the rhyming couplet where he says, despite all of this, despite his mistress being so realistic, he still thinks that she is just as rare and just as wonderful and just as amazing as any other woman that has been lied to by, other poets. And these other poets, he is now coming back here, specifically referring to the Petrarch and Sonnet. Now, Petrarch, I'll just write it here. Petrarch was an Italian poet. He wrote Italian sonnets, or otherwise known as Petrarchan sonnets. But these poems of his were so full of unbelievable, exaggerated imagery that he painted his mistresses or his lovers to be otherworldly. He made so many far-off comparisons that what happened, he made many let's call them pretty. He made many pretty comparisons. But because he did this, and it still carries on today, these comparisons, like my mistress's eyes are like the sun, and the red of coral is like her lips, and her skin is as white as snow. Those kinds of comparisons, they are cliche. And even in today's literature society, they are still cliche. Now, because it is so cliche and so unrealistic, Shakespeare spends this poem, other than making it a love poem, he spends this poem making fun of Petrarch and the Petrarchan sonnet. Okay. So the tone of the poem is humorous. It would be strange for anyone to read a love poem that makes such outrageous comparisons. I think any woman that reads this poem would feel utterly insulted. But his, the real reason he wrote this is to express his love, is to express that his mistress is just as amazing and rare as any other woman. That's number one. That's the surface meaning of the poem. And then number two, The deeper meaning of the poem is the fact that Shakespeare was making fun of the Petrarchan sonnet, which had become incredibly cliche during that time, with all of the common imagery and comparisons that the Petrarchans used to make. Okay. Simple poem. Simple poem, simple answers. We've talked about the tone. We've talked about the structure of the poem. Let's talk a little bit about diction. You guys know what diction is? You remember what diction is? Let me remind you. Let's put that one here. Diction. These refer to words that are used in the text. Okay, so diction, like short for dictionary. And what do you get in a dictionary? You get words. Okay, so if we take a look at some of the words that we get, the diction that we get, we can pay attention like things like the same that we've underlined. The eyes not like the sun, coral, more red, snow is white, breasts are done, hairs are wires, wires grow on her head, roses, no roses in her cheeks, perfumes are delightful, but the breath from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak. Well, I know music, the far more pleasing sound. Never saw a goddess go. Mistress, when she walks, she treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Okay, so those are the kind of words that we are looking at when we look at the diction. This poem can, just like any other poem, can appear in your question paper either as a poem with contextual questions or a poem that has an essay question. This poem is usually a favorite for essay questions because it is so simple and straightforward. Even though it's Shakespeare, people don't believe that Shakespeare is easy and straightforward, but here's the evidence. It is really, there's not much else to this poem. If you are writing an essay on this poem, you will be looking at the tone of the poem, you will be looking at the structure of the poem, you will be looking at the diction of the poem. And we've been through all of those things. All right, I think that's it for today. Thanks for watching.